Hello, Sarah. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a joy. This is a very special film.
Thank you.
It really is. I'm speaking with Sara Taksler. Am I saying that properly?
Yes, you are. Yep.
The writer-director of the new documentary "How Saba Kept Singing," getting its premiere at HotDocs this week. Sarah, it's a beautiful film. How did you discover Saba's story?
So I actually grew up with Dove, who was one of David's grandsons, and met him in nursery school. So this was a long time coming, and I always knew David's story a little bit. I knew that Dove's grandfather was a Holocaust survivor, and that he sang for the Nazis, but I didn't know anything else. And then as a grown up, a few years ago, Avi and David were singing in New York City, and I decided to go see the performance. And the rabbi, it was at a synagogue, the rabbi who introduced them said that he actually had known David for many years. And a couple decades ago, David volunteered at his synagogue. And the rabbi had to go out of town for the weekend for a family event and asked David to fill in for him and lead the service. And he asked David if he'd mind. And David said, okay, what should I talk about for the sermon? And the rabbi said, well, why don't you just tell your story of why you got into singing, not knowing anything about it? And David was like, all right. And this was in the days of answering machines that like the light would blink. And when the rabbi came back to work on Monday morning, the light was blinking like crazy. And the first message said, you should go out of town more often. And the next message said, I haven't stopped crying since Friday night. So the rabbi went into David and said, what did you tell them? And he said, you told me to tell them why I sing. So that night of the concert with him and Avi, he told the audience, and I heard all the details of his wild, remarkable, incredible story, and I went up to Avi right after that concert and asked if they'd considered making a movie.
No, it is an unbelievable story. I mean, we've heard stories of the Holocaust before, but none quite like this. Is so personal, so engaging. Um, what for you? What was that experience like stepping into history with Saba, who had lived it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'll say part of the story being unique is the reason I was drawn to this story is because I know this family,
Mm,
and they make me laugh a lot.
mhm.
And so I was intrigued by the story because I thought it was a way to approach a hard subject in a way that was more accessible.
Yeah.
So, like, even going on this trip to Poland with them, like, we laughed a lot. And I think that's evident in the film. And there's a lot of levity. And I mean, David literally sings throughout his life. And so I felt kind of scared going into Auschwitz. I mean, you don't know what that experience emotionally is going to be like. But then even driving in that day, David has a story that he, upon arriving, it's a museum now. Auschwitz is a museum. So you get there and it has things that museums have, like a cafeteria and, ticket checkpoint to go and things like that. And when he got there, he said to the parking garage guy, oh, can I get in for free? I was a resident here for many years. And, like he approaches things joking around, and that's kind of contagious. And I think gives people a way to process it. But I mean, the first day that we were filming at Auschwitz, we were filmed inside of a gas chamber, a former gas chamber. And I was nauseous. I mean, it's scary to think that you're in this place where these things happen. But Avi actually had said something to me that stuck with me filming there, which was the first time you go to Auschwitz, like the thing that struck him was that it's just another place. Like you get there and the sky is blue and the birds are chirping and there's grass that's green and it's a place. And it kind of just reminds you that like, this is not some black and white movie of a past you can't relate to, you get there and you're like, oh, the people who lived inside of these camps were alive until they weren't, and so it makes it more real.
Yeah, as I was watching, I kept wondering about the idea of ghosts, like not literal ghosts, but like you see them in their big brick buildings, and and you're walking around through them, but it's the stories that are bringing them to life, and it's like, no, well, this isn't just a building. This is where this has happened. This is where the gas chamber was. This is where it's just unbelievable. Like
yeah.
One of the things I thought was so interesting about the film is this idea of telling the story, the power of carrying it on, and passing it on, passing it down. I was wondering for you what the power it lies in passing on the story.
Well, I mean, to me, that's the heart of why I like this story. So I was very close with my grandparents, and my grandma Millie, my last surviving grandparent before I actually passed away while I was making this movie. And so the part of this that personally resonates the most is wanting to know your grandparent, to tell their story, and then kind of that realization as you get older that their story is your story. And you don't know yourself until you know the history of the people who raised you. And so I think in a personal way that resonates with me, but also in this case, I mean, like, Avi's an advocate, like, in his life, he's someone who cares about issues and tries to be vocal and tries to be an ally. And I think that directly relates to knowing what happened when his family didn't have people trying to stop atrocities from happening. And knowing that story is something. And I'll also say, so Avi's dad was my family's rabbi growing up. And we were a few years ago, like, in a service, and the rabbi was telling a story about how his dad came to America not in a legal way. He was in the military and came in, and then later on became a citizen. And my mom said to me, "Oh, that's like Grandpa Harry." And I said, "Wait, what?" And it turned out I didn't know that was, in a different way, that was true in my own family. And I knew my grandpa, and I knew his story, and I knew he was an immigrant, but I didn't know that they didn't come in the most legal of ways. And that is something that he became the most patriotic person I ever knew. So there's sometimes you don't know what. I would never have thought to ask that specific question. And so sometimes you need the people in your family to be open and share, because you don't even know what to ask sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Something else about this film, I mean, it's in the title, but how Saba kept singing, but also forgive me, the name of his
Tippy.
Sippy,
yeah.
Sippy, yeah. The creativity in this film is referred to as therapeutic. I was wondering, from your experiences with them, what is it about that the act of creativity that helps people endure these circumstances like this?
I think, it's not so foreign, right? I mean, thank God I've never been through anything remotely close to surviving what David and Tippy had to endure, but we've been living in hard times, and in very, very different ways. You can see what some people today are enduring around the world. And I think the thing that keeps people going is human connection, and then the arts, right? I mean, like, people turn on a song that helps them cry or helps them stop crying, or whatever it is that they need at that moment. Or people create things a lot, there's some quote that's like, crazy times require furious dancing, or something like that. And I'm getting it wrong, but I mean, you get the point, right? Like, that's our outlet, and we're human beings, and like, we interact through these things, art and music and humor, and they're they're ways to make us feel like people. And so I think, like, especially in a place where someone's actively trying to remove your humanity, singing a song lets you know that you're still you. And I think that helps.
The way of processing is so engaging. It's so fascinating. But in this way, I mean, just to see it on the ground and to hear slip, slip,
Sippy.
Sippy, sorry, to hear Sippy's story about how she's the way that she's creating, as basically a graphic designer. Is unbelievable.
Yeah.
In thinking of this at the end of the film too, there's a moment where Saba's son Eric makes a comment, says he honors the past, but he sings for the future, and it's almost he even refers to it as an act of defiance.
Yes. Yeah. So Avi says that, right? The acts of defiance are, being alive when someone's trying to keep that from you. If you were a prisoner in Auschwitz, singing a song was an act of defiance. Drawing a picture would have been an act of defiance. Getting a pencil would have been an act of defiance. So we actually, in the animation in the film, were inspired by that. And Avi says the greatest act of defiance is to live. And so for us, the scenes where we were animating, they were moments where people were really trying to be alive, stay alive. And those acts of defiance were kind of a motivation to us of how do you keep a spark? How do you keep yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, in relation to that too, there's even a comment that says where the comment is that they're starting to see similar things today from those days, and that you see how things start.
Yes.
I thought that was a really interesting comment. You see how things start.
Yeah, I think we can easily look away for a long time, and then you see how things start. You're sort of like, oh, it's not my problem, I'm not going to pay attention. It's not my problem, I'm not going to pay attention. And then eventually, of course, it is. And I mean, you can certainly see that right now. There's literally a war in Europe right now. And I understand for self-preservation why people choose to look away. But as Avi says, you see how things start.
It's and which goes back to what we were talking about before, the idea of passing on the story, being aware. Sarah, it really is an amazing film, an amazing story. Just as we start to wrap up, I was just thinking, for you, what do you believe is the most important aspect of Saba's story that the viewer needs to take away, or that you would like them to take away from the film?
I think I guess on an individual level and then a greater community level. So for myself, there's a scene in the film where Avi and David are driving into the camp, and there's houses right outside the gate. And Avi asked David if the people knew what was going on, and David says, "Of course they knew. Everybody knew." And that really resonated with me. When I watched that scene for the umpteenth time, it was right as the Black Lives Matter protests were starting. And I realized, to my own horror, I was one of those people who had been looking away, and I knew what was happening. Of course I knew, but I wasn't looking and I wasn't paying attention. And so one thing is, I hope people think about in their own lives, where are they not looking and not asking questions where they should be? And then just kind of in a more individual level, I would say the what keeps you going, how do you keep singing? Whether that's how do you share it so someone else keeps going, and how do you yourself get up? So what is your art? What is your beautiful thing? And thinking about that, those would be two great things for people to be thinking about when they walk out of the theater, that I'd be really happy. And there is still anti-Semitism and racism and war and all of these things very much in our lives today. So we have to keep working to tell these stories. And we also have to take care of our dogs. Those are two that's another. No, I'm just kidding.
She's killing me today. Listen, quiet. Give me just a couple minutes, please. Honestly, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. It's a beautiful film, an amazing story, and without giving away any spoilers, the ending, Sippy's revelation at the end is just like, whoa. It's just incredible story. So thank
It
you.
is an incredible story, and there's some mystery in the story for sure when they go on this journey to figure out more about David's past. And I don't know when this comes out, but hopefully people can check it out at HotDocs. It'll be the screenings are May 1st, May 6th, and May 8th. So I hope people get a chance to see it in person.
Absolutely, absolutely. I wish you the best with the film. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye bye.